discussing, oh, right on me. But with you, what you were discussing about how there is this lack of engagement in work, and I do believe lack of engagement in higher education, that it's almost as if our human intelligence is declining as this artificial intelligence, becomes stronger, because I do believe that companies are saying, hey, my productivity is kind of low, but if I replace it with AI, boom, the AI is engaged. The AI doesn't take, 5, 10 minutes to respond to, or a day to respond to an email. It's just, so it's really interesting that I think that the lack of engagement, or as I'm kind of equating it to, almost a slight decrease in human intelligence and our ability to really focus and flow with material and do the hard work.
Mhm.
Um, that, the computing side of AI can just do it for you. But that's why, like you said, you have to focus on other skills, like the interpersonal skills that AI cannot replace. But yeah, that's my little.
Yeah, yeah. So um the recording didn't start earlier, so I think just to sort of recapture the context here, that it's the World Economic Forum report and the Gallup report that we were talking about. But are you now referring to your life experience more than what you did for your MBA in that case?
The engagement
Yeah.
in the university was definitely directly related to my MBA, probably.
Okay, so you're talking about the engagement of people in your university. Okay.
Yeah, because when I did my
Practice school.
undergrad, it was
Yeah.
different, I would say.
Ah, oh, so your
But that
under
was,
you experienced a difference? What was that difference for your undergrad?
well, I mean, I did community college for a really long time, and then I transferred to UCLA. And UCLA isn't really the university you don't try at. You are very heavily engaged. You want those A's. You want to make sure, you get into a good master's program a year out of undergrad. So it
Uh,
was just very more intense. And so you, it was less likely to be not for you to not engage. But I'd say 50-50. I think all students, decide to engage when they want to, and then also kind of just go off and do their own thing as well. But yeah, just UCLA was really rigorous, so that's why.
Interesting. Well, I think that's a really interesting point actually, because you're saying you've got human beings who are put into a context where the bar is set high, and
Hmm.
then actually you're more likely to be engaged because you know that you're being you're being expected to, you're being watched. It's you're there if you're not going to join
Yeah.
in and energetically put your energy really academically or contribute in the way that you're expected to, then well, you're not going to succeed. So the standards are higher. But in your MBA, you'd say that was different?
Yeah, I mean, the way you're talking about it as well, I think it depends on what you're trying to get out of it.
Mhm,
With the
mhm.
engagement at UCLA, students had these really high goals for themselves, and really high, okay, if I get A's here, I can get into a good master's program here, and then I can get this really good blah, blah, blah here. But
Yeah, yeah.
at the MBA program, I we I saw a lot of people trying to get a visa, not gonna lie. And so it's just, if you're just trying to get access to the UK, what's the point of like doing well in school and trying hard? And a lot of people didn't even show up, and they had a really big attendance problem. So it's what you're trying to get out of the experience, I guess, if that
Hmm.
makes sense.
Hmm.
So, but yeah, I was here for both. I came into it really wanting a really good master's program. I wanted to be challenged. I wanted this master's to really propel me in a way towards like new heights, but career-wise, hopefully. But we all have different desires, I think, and that's how that probably dictates our engagement.
Yeah, absolutely. So you came with a huge amount of motivation, wanting this to really I mean, also you put a lot of effort in, you moved countries, you wanted an international experience.
Yeah.
And then I'm sure you were with others, as you say, others who also came over from abroad, but then there were also people who didn't. So
Mhm.
the amount of effort we put into something then dictates the amount of focus we put into that, and then the corresponding effort we continue to put into something. If it's taken a lot of effort to get somewhere, then we get there and we continue that. So that's interesting, isn't it? But you didn't
Yeah.
receive the same engagement back that you were expecting.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Agreed.
So that also, I think we can apply to workplaces. Again, some people come in, they're really excited. Hey, I've got in here, and then realize, oh, this is really quite sort of flatlining, energetically dull. And
Hmm.
I've had that feedback actually from people, maybe young apprentices, they go into businesses, they're really excited, they've put a lot of energy into it, their parents are all proud of them for having achieved something, and they've got a degree, maybe it's a graduate apprenticeship role, and then they end up joining a company, and some of these companies are huge, and you would imagine they'd have really well established apprenticeship programs, for example, where there's a sort of curriculum set up, and there's engaging things for them to get involved in, and where their views are valued, and where they're listened to, where the fresh energy is utilized. But no, they arrive and often feel like a bit of a lost kind of person around the place, and end up making tea for people and kind of,
Hmm.
and feel disengaged, and then demotivated, and often then just finish their apprenticeship and then leave. And I know this of certain companies. I won't mention names here, but these are huge companies that have established apprenticeship approaches, and they would have the resources to do this, in a really effective way. And yet it hasn't been working for years. And especially now, if they then are going to bring AI in as well, it could dehumanize things even more, not really value the energy that you have there in each human.
Hmm. Yeah, I can see it does definitely be different across different industries as well. And just like you said, kind of the monotony of the work in very creative environments and where your voice is heard, you're gonna turn to more critical thinking, and you're gonna just turn to like computing and automation and hoping that this task will then, complete this task, but completes this one. But so, because I was thinking like Google or, Netflix has been known to have a really nice flat organizational culture. And so it's like, are those also potentially more engaging and therefore, I mean, not to say that there's a lack of use of AI, but just that kind of allows the human intelligence to grow and slightly maybe be augmented rather than replaced by AI, I guess, because you're still using your different parts of your brain that aren't, yeah, dependent on that are more either creative or interpersonal, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And in fact, Google DeepMind, I did paste that in the HI AI community. The Google DeepMind context, and Google approach to AI is to take it really, really slowly. Um, yeah,
No, that's
it's
good.
a really, really lovely way of seeing it, actually. Um, Sorry, did you hear that?
Hmm.
Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, that was just the background. I was just pressing that link actually, which I pasted into the community. And that
Oh,
community
nice.
link it's the AI revolution, Google's developers on the future of artificial intelligence. It's a 60 minutes program.
Oh, cool.
And in fact, let's just see whether I can. No, don't worry. I just was going to show you an extract, but I hadn't prepared it. So you just made me think about it. So I
Yeah,
will,
I'd love to look at that.
yeah, I'll do another recording just myself and sort of extract the bit that I'm talking about. But it's very, very interesting because the chief exec says that it's about understanding how AI really works means having to take your time with the human intelligence and humans getting used to it as well. So he's deliberately taking his time. He's getting some criticism for it, but he's also doing it deliberately. So I think that's a really sensible approach.
Mhm.
Yeah, so that was nice to hear actually. So definitely have a look at that. Have a look at that 60-minute episode. So let's move into the there's two articles now. Sarah, if you need to drop off, because I don't know how much time you have, but you did mention that you might not have the whole hour. So it's up to you. I can continue going through this, or you can join me as a conversation partner. It's up to you. But
If you don't mind, I got like if you can begin the intro to the article with me, that'd be great. And then I'll hop off in like at 7:15 and then you can finish up the last
okay,
15 if
that's
that's
fine.
cool.
Yeah. So this is the research by Michael Gehrlich in 2025. And I love the fact that he focuses on critical thinking here, the future of critical thinking, because critical thinking is the key thing that is an actual skill, which I believe we really need to focus on developing consciously. It won't just happen alone. And in order to get that augmentation we were talking about, that the World Economic Forum talks about as well, we need to do this consciously. So let's have a look at the abstract. Now, I think the abstract, as we all know, if you've done any academic work, is kind of the thing that you need read first to see whether you want to read any more kind of thing. But let's just have a look at this. So we know that AI tools have transformed numerous aspects of daily life, yet its impact on critical thinking remains underexplored. This is the key thing that we really, we really haven't got a great focus on that at this point. So this study investigates the relationship between AI tool usage and critical thinking skills, focusing on cognitive uploading as a mediating factor. I think that's the really interesting area here, that we're looking at cognitive offloading as a mediating factor. How does cognitive offloading actually work and happen in this whole process? So using a mixed method approach, we conducted surveys and in-depth interviews with 666 participants. I don't know if that number's deliberate.
Yeah, I agree. It's a weird number to
Across diverse age groups and educational backgrounds. So mixed method, you can see that in the methodology section. It just means that they've used a variety of methods rather than just one methodology. They use analysis of variance, ANOVA, and correlation analysis, while qualitative insights were obtained through thematic analysis of interview scripts. So in other words, there's quantitative and qualitative data here. And the findings revealed a significant negative correlation between frequent AI tool usage and critical thinking abilities, mediated by increased cognitive uploading. So in other words, negative correlation means that one thing goes up, the other thing goes down, but in a similar pattern to similar degrees, or that we know that correlation doesn't mean causation. That's very key in correlation. However, if two things are either negatively or positive correlated, which means where one variable goes up, the other one goes up, you're more likely to think, right, if it happens again and again, and if it's a very strong correlation, then it's more likely to be causative. But we can't say that it is causative. Younger participants exhibited higher dependence on AI tools and lower critical thinking scores compared to older participants, interestingly. Furthermore, higher educational attainment was associated with better critical thinking, regardless of AU usage. Okay, so that's interesting because maybe that has something to do with that people who've done a lot of academic work are already thinking critically or more
Mm.
likely to think critically about things because they've done lots of reading, their cognitive
Yeah, they've been having to use their brain, yeah, more cognitively. Yeah.
yeah, they're
Cognitively.
trained already to apply
Mhm.
their critical thinking. And it actually, there's other research that also looks at AI in relation to higher education. Higher education seems to be an augmenting factor, sort of, or a balancing out factor that higher education can actually help to reduce the impact by which cognitive offloading or cognitive decline happens. So these results highlight the potential cognitive costs of AI tool reliance, emphasizing the need for educational strategies and promote critical engagement with AI technologies. This study contributes to the growing discourse on AI's cognitive implications, offering practical recommendations for mitigating its adverse effects on critical thinking. So we're not obviously going to go through the whole thing here. This is a very long document, but anybody interested in this, I would recommend you look at the actual source material, and the message here is also, especially leaders, look at the actual journal articles. Don't always only look at the summary, hype that you get on social media, because then you will know how to really understand it and apply it. These findings underscore the importance of fostering critical thinking in an AI-driven world, making this research essential reading for educated policymakers and technologists, and I would say definitely leaders as well here.
Mm.
So, um, so that's basically what it says in a nutshell. So
And they didn't give a definition of cognitive offloading in the
yes,
abstract,
yes, they
did
do.
they?
They do here.
Oh,
Yeah,
well, in the intro,
I've
but okay.
highlighted it here already. So,
Yeah, yeah.
so cognitive
Thank
offloading,
you.
as described by Risco and Gilbert, involves, obviously there'll be so many different definitions as there is for most things.
Yeah, right. Mhm.
It involves using external tools to reduce the cognitive load on an individual's working memory. So, in other
Mm.
words, you are a cognitive load is how many items you put into your working memory at any one time. So working memory means the actual items you're managing at any one time. You're juggling. That's the working memory. And there are only so many things that you can hold in your working memory. We think, this is Miller in 1972, actually, and I don't think actually it's been changed since then, found that we can only manage 7 plus or minus 2 chunks. You can then chunk things. So, for example, a telephone number can become one chunk if you know it really well, or if you find a mnemonic to remember your telephone number, if you use somebody's birthday plus something else or whatever. So it's the number of chunks. So if your cognitive load, how much you can carry, will also depend on how you practice it. Do you chunk your stuff? How do you work it? How good is your memory anyway? But offloading basically means that you become lazy in that respect. You don't try and use your working memory. You don't try and hold all the bits in one place. So imagine, like, now we're having a conversation. I'm saying something. You're holding certain bits of what I've said in your memory to try and
Mhm.
make sense. So it's a sense making process, isn't it? How does this
Yeah.
thing relate to what we said earlier? And all those things are in your working memory, and you are holding them there. Now, you've done that through your MBA. You've done that through your undergrad. You've done that in school. You've continued keeping your working memory active, which is why I think probably HE does really moderate the impact, because
Yeah, I'm thinking about it just like just as an example before I hop off is like if you instead of using because I would probably use AI the most for language and writing and so instead of writing out that email thinking about oh what's the best way to make her feel good about this situation or how can I be stern with her or how can I communicate with her in a way that's like understanding but still firm whatever you're generating this email in your mind. But instead of, I guess, critically thinking the way in which I write this piece will make her feel happy, sad, or whatever, I'm just going to go into AI and go like, you know what? I just need to write this stern email. I do want to be understanding of the time crunch, but I need her to know that and then boom. AI does it. So it's just like, is that our offload of saying instead of creating the language needed, in order to get a good business response or whatever you're trying to get,
Exactly.
you
Yeah.
just like, you just say, AI, you prompt it and like you always gotta like make sure the prompt is really good. But yeah, so really you're just critically thinking about a prompt more than you're
Exactly.
critically thinking
Yeah,
about,
absolutely.
yeah.
So basically using external tools, anything that reduces the work you yourself have to do. That's basically what it means. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Doing it, and you're becoming lazier and lazier to do the thinking yourself. And another really,
hmm
really
Yeah.
worrying statistic or fact, well, it's now been called a fact by many, we can already see it happening actually in businesses, which is that the entry roles and the administrative roles are going to be replaced
Yeah.
by AI. The worry with that is that the thinking skills that go into those administrative roles will also no longer be there because a
Yeah.
machine is doing it. And therefore, how is that going to impact on the understanding of whatever processes that company is involved in? How is that going to impact on the next level up? So
hmm
I worry about the lack of human insight into those processes and the costs that will have.
Interesting. Yeah.
Um,
hmm
so yeah, we need to think so much more about literally just making things more efficient or making things quicker, and also think about what cost it will have on
hmm
whole human thinking. So, and having conversations is animating as well. It keeps our cognitive load exercised, and human
Yeah.
conversations is
Yeah.
actually so important. And the less we have that, the more we rely just on talking to a computer, an
Yeah.
inanimate object. We talk differently. I mean, I talk to ChatGPT every day, but I talk to
I
it
know.
differently to the way I would talk to a human.
No, it's interesting. I
Yeah.
weirdly enough got sent a Jordan Peterson quote or like a little blurb that he did, but he was talking about a lot of people think by speaking. So there don't have this this isn't backed by research, or he didn't like put the research in the post. But yeah, basically we don't have that internal dialogue. And so a lot of our thinking comes from communication and
Yeah.
comes from listening and comes from just, obviously speaking it out loud. So it's just like regurgitating what's going on in our mind, but we don't do that for pre-thought. We just I guess our thinking is, yeah, communication, which was really interesting to me because I'm definitely overthinking in my brain all the time. But a
Right.
lot of people need that communication in order to like, yeah, in order to, like you said, make sense of things.
But
So
it also
that's
makes it
interesting.
more down to earth, because you can have really, really amazing thoughts, but if those thoughts don't make sense to others, then those thoughts are redundant, aren't they? If you're highly
Yeah,
intellectual or have great ideas, wonderful. But if those ideas can't could be communicated,
yeah.
they become useless in the world at large.
So speaking is like testing your thoughts in a way.
Yeah, exactly. That's the way I see it. Yeah,
Mhm.
and you can test your thoughts to different audiences, obviously. Some
Yeah.
will get
Mhm.
it when you use certain words. Other people will say, "What are you talking about?" Because they don't speak that language. So
Yeah.
it depends
Or
what you want.
cultural or yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm
Mhm.
conscious. I'm conscious of your time, but thank
Yeah,
you so
no,
much.
it's good. I'm gonna head off, but thank you so much, Lizzie. This was very, very, very interesting. It's always you walk away a little bit like, huh, sad, or also, yeah, curious of what the future's gonna bring, really,
Oh, definitely. Well, we're living in such big times.
Yeah, it's
The
making me think about what I need to like focus on career-wise so that I can, still augment with AI and not be replaced by it, It's almost like a way we need to think about it.
Definitely, yeah. And as the Google CEO was saying as well, at least we're thinking about it earlier, quite early on. Lots of people are thinking about it. I still don't think many people are thinking about it, in terms of actually looking at how do we get the HI going. Most people are thinking about how do I use AI rather than
Yeah.
how do I balance it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so,
Yeah.
but in the end, yeah, one needs the other. So but it's the young people as well, and people who are, as you say, planning careers. You're in a different place to people who are in their advanced stages of their career. It affects us all, but it affects some generations. I wouldn't say more than others, but over a longer period of time than others. So I think the world is going to change hugely in the next 10 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was listening to the CTO of Uber earlier today, and he reckons 20% of cars will be driverless in 10 years' time. And yeah, we're going to have a very different road system. And kind of like,
Wow.
yeah, I mean, it depends where, obviously, in which country it'll
Yeah.
vary, but yeah.
Ah, interesting. No, I'm ready. I'm excited though, in a way as well. But thank you, Lizzie. I'll see
Okay,
you
Sarah,
soon.
let's take care.
Bye. You
Bye.
take
Bye.
care.
Yeah, so let's continue looking through this article. So critical thinking here is defined as the ability to analyze, evaluate, and synthesize information to make reasoned decisions. And that is a fundamental cognitive skill essential for academic success, professional competence, and informed citizenship. It involves various cognitive processes, including problem solving, decision-making, and reflective thinking, which are crucial for navigating complex and dynamic environments. The increasing reliance on AI tools for information retrieval and decision-making raises questions about how these technologies influence users' critical thinking abilities. The dual-edged nature of AI in cognitive development has been a focal point in recent research. AI tools can enhance learning outcomes by providing personalized instruction and immediate feedback, thus supporting skill acquisition and knowledge retention. However, this is the important sentence, growing evidence shows that over-reliance on these tools can lead to cognitive uploading. And then let's have a look at this. Cognitive uploading occurs when individuals delegate cognitive tasks to external aids, reducing their engagement in deep reflective thinking. And this phenomenon is particularly concerning in the context of critical thinking, which requires active cognitive engagement to analyze and evaluate information effectively. Right. So I think this is a very, very important part of the entire article, because this is where the growing evidence is pointing us. And remember, when you read actual source material, journal articles, what you're getting, people don't just make throwaway comments like they might make if you're just reading a social media link. You don't know where the sources come from. In an actual journal article, which is peer reviewed, this is why it is important to look at a peer reviewed journal article. You won't be allowed to make statements if they're not actually proven in some way. And the peer reviewers will look at the way that things are expressed. So you can have greater confidence in what you're reading. So, yeah, as we say, as it says, the phenomenon is particularly concerning in the context of critical thinking, which requires active cognitive engagement to analyze. Right, let us have a look a bit further. In educational settings, integrating AI tools has shown promising results and potential drawback. Adaptive learning platforms and intelligent tutoring systems have been praised for their ability to tailor educational experiences to individual student needs, thereby enhancing learning outcomes. Other studies did not observe any significant impact of AI in education. However, there is also concern that such tools might reduce students' engagement in critical thinking activities as they might become accustomed to the ease and convenience of AI-provided solutions. The potential negative impact of AI on critical thinking extends beyond educational contexts. In professional and everyday scenarios, the use of AI tools for decision-making and problem-solving can influence cognitive processes. For instance, automated decision support systems in healthcare and finance streamline operations and improve efficiency, but might also reduce the need for professionals to engage in independent critical analysis. This could result in a workforce that is highly efficient, yet potentially less capable of independent problem solving and critical evaluation. So leaders and anybody, whoever it is that's listening, please bear that in mind. Are you actually engaging your mind? Are you actually critically evaluating what you are reading? Are you thinking about it? Are you taking in the words? You know, so as I'm highlighting words here, I'm doing that in order to reinforce it in my mind and in your mind. It helps me to go over the meaning. You know, these are words that are entering my brain cells. The brain cells are connecting to other brain cells, and I'm trying to link it to what I already know and make sense of it. So This study sought to explore the impact of AI tool usage on critical thinking skills with a particular focus on cognitive offloading as a mediating variable. This research aimed to provide a comprehensive understanding of the broader cognitive implications of AI tool usage by investigating how AI tools influence cognitive processes and the extent to which they encourage cognitive offloading. So yeah, this is the thing, the extent to which they encourage cognitive offloading. So the research question guiding this study were, how does the usage of AI tools impact critical thinking skills? And what is the mediating role of cognitive offloading in the relationship between AI tool usage and critical thinking? So hypothesis one is higher AI tool usage is associated with reduced critical thinking skills. And the second hypothesis, cognitive offloading mediates the relationship between AI tool usage and critical thinking skills. So again, I'm double checking, have I made sense of this, or are my words just uttering, is my mouth just uttering these words? So say that again. Higher AI tool usage is associated with reduced critical thinking. That's the first hypothesis. Based on that introduction, that worry that it might happen. Second hypothesis that we're testing here in this study is cognitive offloading mediates the relationship between AI tool usage and critical thinking skills. So yeah, when you read further into that, you can understand the hypotheses in greater detail. When you're saying that cognitive offloading mediates the relationship between AI tool usage and critical thinking skills, it means that if we are cognitively offloading, that means, like Sarah and I discussed, using less working memory, being lazy to actually employ our own onboard computer to analyze. We're just not using the same effort. Because we're human, we have all these different variables involved as to whether we will focus on it. So the cognitive offloading, the amount that we offload to something else external to us, will influence and will mediate. A mediator is something that controls both sides, the way that things actually work across both the AI tool, how you use it, the AI tool usage, and the critical thinking skills. So the way that the AI tool usage happens as a result of how the human interacts with it, and the way that the human is thinking critically is actually mediated by the amount of cognitive offloading. Yeah, does that make sense? So the more we offload, the more that might be a mediator, or the more that might influence how we actually use the AI tool and how we employ our critical thinking skills. So it's a very interesting hypothesis. So this study aimed to shed light on the broader cognitive implications of AI tool usage and provide actionable recommendations for mitigating potential negative impacts on critical thinking. Understanding these dynamic stakeholders can develop strategies to balance the benefits of AI with the need to maintain and enhance critical thinking skills. This research contributes to the growing body of literature on AI and cognition, offering insights that can inform educational practices, policy decisions, and design of AI technologies. And that's also really important for all of our AI engineers to understand. This is why this sort of research needs to be analyzed and looked at, not just by educationalists or leaders or human beings in general, parents, but actually by AI engineers as well, because it's about how AI technologies are designed to ensure that the human element is also in it. So then we have a literature review, and it looks at the theoretical foundations of critical thinking and cognitive offloading. So there is a lot there about more definition of what we're talking about here, because in any academic review, you have to, of course, define your terms. So critical thinking is a multifaceted cognitive process that involves the capacity to think clearly and rationally, understand logical connections between ideas, evaluate arguments, and identify inconsistencies in reasoning. Okay. And it says this process is crucial for effective problem solving, informed decision making, acquisition of knowledge. So then we've got more terms here. Critical thinking is defined as by Ennis, reasonable reflective thinking focused on deciding what to believe or do. Interesting, I quite like that. Highlighting its evaluative nature. You're looking at the value of, if you're evaluating, you're saying, what's the value of this? What's the value of that? And Paul Eder described it as the art of analyzing and improving thinking, focusing on intellectual standards such as clarity, accuracy, and logic. Halpern emphasized the practical application of critical thinking skills across different contexts, underscoring its real-world utility. How much does it really give us a useful application in the real world? Critical thinking is integral to cognitive development, enabling individuals to process information more effectively and engage in reflective thinking. It enhances academic performance, problem-solving abilities, and informed decision-making. Students with strong critical thinking skills tend to perform better academically as they can understand complex concepts, analyze texts, and construct well-reasoned argument. All this needs highlighting. I know you should never highlight everything, but informed decision-making is so important. Decision-making is such an important life skill and leadership skill, of course. Furthermore, critical thinkers are better equipped to solve problems systematically, evaluate evidence, and consider alternative solutions. They are also less susceptible to manipulation by misleading information or cognitive biases, making them more discerning consumers of information. Okay, so wow, we have so much very, very powerful reason to become critical thinkers. So yeah, critical thinkers, we need to be celebrated. Critical thinking needs to be exercised and doesn't come on its own. Cognitive offloading refers to the externalization of cognitive processes, often involving tools or external agents such as notes, calculators, or digital tools like AI to reduce cognitive load. While cognitive offloading can improve efficiency by freeing up cognitive resources, it does not inherently imply a reduction in task engagement. That is important. In some cases, however, extensive reliance on external tools, particularly AI, may reduce the need for deep cognitive involvement, potentially affecting critical thinking. The mechanisms of offloading include external memory aids, digital tools, and social networks, which help individuals manage tasks and information without overwhelming their working memory. Digital tools, particularly AI-powered applications, can perform tasks such as calculations, data retrieval, and decision-making, therefore freeing up cognitive resources for more complex thinking. Social offloading involves delegating tasks to others or seeking advice and information from social networks, reducing the cognitive burden on the individual, while cognitive offloading can enhance efficiency and reduce mental strain, and it also affects cognitive development and critical thinking. Excess reliance on external aids may lead to a cognitive decline in internal cognitive abilities, such as memory retention and critical analysis skills. This phenomenon raises concerns about the long-term cognitive effects of pervasive technology use. On the one hand, cognitive offloading can be seen as a beneficial strategy for managing cognitive load and enhancing productivity. On the other hand, it may undermine the development and maintenance of critical cognitive skills, particularly if individuals become overly dependent on external tools. Okay, so it goes on to explain more about the cognitive loading and critical thinking context. Let's just have a look at this. Is important to remember and also highlight. Recent studies, such as those of Gehrlich, show that use of AI in educational settings does not always result in improved cognitive or communication skills, particularly in students who already demonstrate well-developed abilities. Interesting. I find that very interesting. Furthermore, Gehrlich highlights how increased trust in AI tools can result in greater cognitive offloading, which in turn reduces critical engagement in critical thinking. These findings resonate with the earlier work of Sparrow, but more recently emphasizes the relationship between AI and cognitive offloading is multifaceted, with trust playing a key role. Interesting. Okay. Trust, which is of course a complete human factor, nothing to do with AI at all, because as we know, trust is linked with emotions, with social, cognitive, emotional factors. So let us have a look. You need to, as you can see here as I'm dragging it, this is a long document. We are not going to look at all of it, of course. My aim here was really just to give you an overview. You have all the details of the results, the methodology, of course, before that, then the analysis of variance, then ANOVA results. Now, I studied psychology with a lot of social statistics and statistics as well in it. So it's not, I don't think, vital that you look at this detail if you don't understand it. If you do, it can be interesting. But again, I think looking at what the interpretation, the explanation of these tables, even if you've never done an analysis of variance, I think is useful. These findings align with the theories of cognitive offloading, where the automation of analytical tasks reduce the need for independent reasoning. There we go. The residual variance suggests the influence of additional factors such as educational background and cognitive engagement on critical thinking. This underscores the need for strategies that balance the benefits of AI integration with the development of independent thinking skills, particularly in educational organizational settings. So what we're doing here is we're basically evidencing it and making sure that this isn't just a claim, but we have evidence to show that the results are actually telling us what they're claiming here. Table 4 presents the analysis of variance results, examining the impact of demographic variables on deep thinking activities. Education level, age, and occupation were found to have significant effects, highlighting their critical roles in shaping cognitive engagement. Fascinating. Also very important to know for leaders why that is. Participants with advanced education levels and those in managerial roles exhibited higher levels of deep thinking, likely due to greater exposure to cognitively demanding tasks. Conversely, gender did not significantly influence deep thinking activities, suggesting that other factors may play a more important role. These findings underscore the interplay between demographic variables and cognitive engagement, offering actionable insights for educational occupational strategies aimed at fostering critical thinking. So again, got to be very careful in how we interpret these results and how we apply these results. But people who have engaged in actual critical thinking from a young age and up to a longer age and have exercised their brain in that way more will just be more likely to exercise that way. They have developed those critical thinking muscles, those critical thinking patterns. Just like people who've gone to the gym for a regular time will be more likely to have developed certain muscle groups in relation to whatever they do at the gym. It's exactly the same. We develop patterns dependent on what we do. Our actions develop patterns. In fact, our actions are the thing that develop patterns more than anything else. So this isn't about being classist or anything else. It's just about recognizing that we as humans become a product of whatever we have experienced. And if we have experienced more critical thinking activities, we are more likely to engage in critical thinking. That doesn't mean that we're going to be less biased necessarily, unless we've also taught ourselves to be less biased, to proactively be aware of our own biases, our own stereotypes. So, let's not say that critical thinkers are definitely always better at drawing conclusions from data than non-critical thinkers, because it's not only the critical thinking, it's about the awareness of how to balance out an argument as well, which of course is part of critical thinking. But there are some amazing critical thinkers who have also been shown to be victims of groupthink and come to completely the wrong conclusions because they have been victims of our human fallibilities, our human tendencies to just fall into the trap of gravitating towards others because of social variables. Our social needs are huge. We are pack animals. So sometimes all of our cognitive thinking and all of our balancing of factors really kind of dissolves and reduces meaning, reduces the weight of importance when we are faced with a social situation of needing to look competent or whatever it might be. And it depends then on your internal traits, boldness, courage, how much you're likely to stick to that. So please remember, this is a huge amount of variables involved here. I just needed to say that. So we've got a lot of things that I've highlighted here. This article is in the community. Please read it through. The highlights will also be there again. I'll re-upload it based on the highlights I've just put in there. There is a lot of detail here, but let us go through to the conclusion because we still have the other article to look at as well, which we'll just do in a little bit less depth. So the discussion. All right, so let's have a look. Sorry. These are the results from the interviews. They're also really, really interesting to look at. The qualitative data collected through 50 semi-structured interviews provided rich insights that support and elaborate on the findings from the quantitative analysis. That just means words rather than numbers. Participants across different age groups and educational backgrounds discussed their experiences with AI tools, cognitive offloading, and the impact on their critical thinking abilities. have a look. So we have themes here that are coming out. The AI dependence. Just going to highlight those first sentences. You can also read those for yourselves. Have a break from my voice. Interestingly here, reported a high reliance on AI tools for routine and cognitive tasks. For instance, one participant noted, I use AI for everything from scheduling to finding information. It's become part of how I think. This theme aligns with the quantitative findings on cognitive offloading, highlighting how AI tools serve as cognitive substitutes rather than supplements. Goes back to what the World Economic Forum says about augmentation. Then we have the need to augment between HI and AI rather than replace. Cognitive engagement. Several participants expressed concern about diminished opportunities for engaging in independent cognitive tasks. How sad. One participant remarked, the more I use AI, the less I feel the need to problem solve on my own. It's like I'm losing my ability to think critically. Ooh la la. This theme reinforces the quantitative observation of reduced critical thinking skills associated with increased AI tool usage. Then we have ethical concerns. Yeah, raised concerns about the transparency and bias of AI recommendation. So my view is that now that we live in the AI age, we have a far greater responsibility to be focused on our ethics, because we humans are actually training the large language models. You know, we are the trainers of it. We give it the data. So if we're unethical, it will become unethical. So we better tidy up our act as human beings. So I sometimes wonder if AI is subtly nudging me towards decisions I wouldn't normally make. Ooh, these concerns underline the potential ethical implications of AI reliance, complementing the quantitative results indicating reduced cognitive engagement. Interesting. It would be lovely to see the example from that. So then it goes a little bit more into what they did, then the critical thinking, educational background links, perceived impact on cognitive skills, overall support of quantitative finding, then there's the discussion. So the findings are consistent with previous research indicating that excessive reliance on AI tools can negatively impact critical thinking skills. So, you know, we have other research that they quote. And if you're interested in looking at more research, any one journal article will give you all the references, of course, that you can look at also in depth. Depends how deeply you want to go. Halpern's work emphasizes the importance of critical thinking in educational and professional contexts, and our results support the notion that reliance on AI tools may inhibit the development of these crucial skills. Yeah, again, you know, it's all correlating. The message is the same across the piece. The negative correlation between AI usage and critical thinking observed in our study aligns with Halpern's concerns about the over-reliance on technology for cognitive tasks. Moreover, our results resonate with the insights from Gehrlich's study on virtual influencers. This study highlights how AI-driven virtual influencers shape consumer behavior and decision-making processes, potentially reducing the need for independent critical evaluation. The reliance on AI-generated content can diminish users' critical thinking abilities, as they may accept information and recommendations without thorough scrutiny. This is so important for us to consider as a human race. So important. We are not allowed to become lazy. We have to continue scrutinizing. I sat on a local government scrutiny committee for quite a few years. So the committee is there to scrutinize the local government results. It's literally called the scrutiny committee because it scrutinizes the local government activities. Who's involved in what, which decisions are made, etc. Now, I have views about how the scrutiny committee operates and applies its scrutiny, which also is a problem in itself, but that's often the case, isn't it? It's like any tool you use can also be examined. Any approach you use also needs to be scrutinized in itself. We need to be critical of ourselves as humans. We need to have external people to look at our behaviors so it keeps us true and focused. We cannot just rely on ourselves. We have to have external independent evaluation of other humans that help us to do that. Whatever it is, in my opinion, and especially accountability frameworks, accountability and governance frameworks that leaders should be tasked to create, so that we don't have institutional failure and scandals the world over. Like we know about the post office scandal, we know about the VW scandal, we know about the Boeing scandal, we know about the HSBC scandal, we know about the blood scandal in England. We know about the with the blood infected scandal, where people were given infected blood and basically they were given HIV. Absolutely awful, and lived with it forever and ever, still alive now, still haven't had compensation. The post office scandal has affected thousands and thousands, and really it was only a tiny number of senior executives who are completely and utterly accountable for that, who didn't stop that slippery slope of denial. So in a further conversation, I'm sure this will come up. It's one of my areas of research, is scandals and how they actually happen. Because if we understand how scandals happen, then we understand what we need to look out for. And I see it a little bit like the same as looking for the symptoms of a heart attack or a stroke. Basically, if you know those symptoms, then we also know what to look for and how to behave. In exactly the same way, we then know how to behave and react quickly. In exactly the same way, we need to be able to identify the signals and the symptoms of scandals before they become a scandal, the human behaviors behind those, the first human behaviors, the denial, the lying, the talking behind closed doors, the reduction of significance of any evidence that might show that the company itself has done something wrong, the lack of focus on mistakes, because we want to hide away as if we're perfect. No human being is perfect. We shouldn't pretend to be perfect. Mistakes need to be learning material, and there needs to be a culture of openness, of exploring mistakes, so that any mistake that is made will be scrutinized before it becomes too big. If you try and create a culture where mistakes are not allowed to happen, or are seen to be, people get worried about them because they're then in the firing line for blame, for example. If there's a blame culture, what happens then is, of course, people will employ all their defense mechanisms, will not look at their mistakes. And what happens then? The mistakes get bigger and bigger and bigger. And that is how scandals happen. So by looking at the worst case scenario, we can actually create the best case scenario. And that is why I've studied scandals. And this all links to this, because unless we as humans understand our own psychology, and unless we as leaders, especially people who have decision-making influence and power, if you understand what drives humans as individuals, and especially as teams, we are social animals, we are so influenced by each other, then you as a leader will have greater confidence and awareness of how to carry yourself, so you can create those amazing cultures that are so important, especially in this AI age, where tech is dominant and overwhelming humans. Humans have to lead with integrity, with compassion, with ability to be bold and face their mistakes. That is a good leader, a leader who models that so that others are encouraged to do the same. Stop any malpractice in its tracks by highlighting that nobody will get away with malpractice, because it is a feature and a function of the environment and the culture to highlight it, rather than to hide it. Hugely important. So, of course, any of this, right? How much, going back to this, the reliance on AI generated content diminishes users' critical thinking abilities, as they may accept information recommendations without that thorough scrutiny. That made me go into my scandal brainwaves and that part of my neural network, because without thorough scrutiny is a trigger for me. I've worked a lot with victims of scandals. I've seen scandals. I've worked with leaders trying to repair scandals and crisis management. Without thorough scrutiny is the thing that is one of the triggers of why it was allowed to happen in the first place. If we now have AI on top of that, it'll reduce the scrutiny even more. This is why I'm so worried about humans not facing their own fallibilities. We're just human. We all have common patterns and common fallibilities. We need to understand our human condition so that we don't fall into our own traps. So Gehrlich provides valuable insights into how trust in IA tools influences cognitive offloading and decision-making. The findings suggest that as users develop greater trust in an AI, they're more likely to delegate cognitive tasks to these tools, which aligns with our observation of increased cognitive offloading, leading to reduced critical thinking. The trust creates a dependence on AI for routine cognitive tasks, thus reducing the necessity for individuals to engage deeply with the information they process. Increased trust in AI tools leads to greater cognitive uploading, which in turn reduces critical thinking skills. This cycle is exacerbated by the role of virtual influencers who further reinforce the reliance on AI-generated content by acting as credible source of information. Such an important paragraph, absolutely vital. I don't know if I can change the color here. I'm sure I can, but I don't know how. I'll tell you what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually here, I'm going to underline this text just to make it different, because this is such an important so you've got underlining and highlighting. Such an important factor here. Then it goes into role of cognitive offloading, the role of cognitive offloading in mediating the relationship between AI tool usage and critical thinking. This is going back to that hypothesis, is a novel contribution of this study. Very difficult to actually to research. Cognitive offloading, as described by Risco and Gilbert, involves the delegation of cognitive tasks to external tools, thereby reducing the cognitive load. See, what this article does as well is it reminds us of the definitions. So you can skim it. It's made to be skimmed because people know that people are going to skim it. Our findings indicate that cognitive offloading significantly mediates the relationship between AI usage and critical thinking, suggesting that the reduction in cognitive load may lead to diminished opportunities for cognitive engagement and critical analysis. There we go. Read that again in your minds. Our findings indicate Again, it aligns with Carr's argument in The Shallows, which posits that technology can create cognitive shortcuts that reduce the need for deep thinking. That these findings also resonate with Sparrow, Liu, and Wegener's concept of the Google effect, where easy access to information via technology leads to a decline in memory retention and independent problem-solving skills. So Gehrlich's findings indicate that increased trust in AI tools correlates with higher cognitive offloading. So this idea of trust, the more we trust it, the less we think about the results. So important. Again, in the human context, going back to our sort of worst case scenario where institutional failure happens through human behavior, if we trust the humans we're with, or if the power is accentuated by the leaders in terms of a top-down autocracy or a blame culture, you're far more likely to then use that trust to not think about whatever the topic is yourself. So engaging in your own critical thinking, keeping that critical debate open, having the courage and boldness to say something is so vitally important. And I would argue more important than ever before because we have AI. So the study highlighted that users who trust AI tools are more likely to rely on them for decision-making, thus reducing their engagement in critical thinking process. This trust, fostered by the perceived reliability and convenience of AI tools, promotes the cognitive dependence that diminishes the need for active cognitive effort. There we go. For me, my alarm bells are ringing completely and utterly. Now, my screen behind me, the reason I've chosen that is clearly because on the one hand, we have our actual brains, creativity, which are wonderful. On the other hand, we have AI. Sorry, I've mirrored my screen, which means it says IA there, but it's AI. Now, yes, it's our choice how we make those two things connect. It is our choice, but we need to make that choice consciously. There is a whole section on educational implications. Then there's a hypothesis evaluation. And here then we have conclusions. So let's just have a quick look at this. The findings of the study illuminate the complex interplay among AI tool usage, cognitive offloading, and critical thinking. I'll let you read this in your heads for a while here. Yeah, and this is the other thing. Younger participants who exhibit higher dependence on AI tools scored lower in critical thinking compared to their older counterparts. Interesting. If you think about it, a younger generation, of course, have been surrounded by technology and social media from the very beginning of their lives, if depending on their age, of course. But the more you've had technology proportionate to the age you're at, and the amount of time you've been on planet Earth, the more you are going to be used to using it. And older participants, of course, have, again, patterns that have developed without technologies, which is why intergenerational working and learning is so important. And people in their 50s plus should be, so much in demand, especially now. So younger leaders, especially in countries like Saudi Arabia, for example, where I know that proportionately there are some very, very young senior people, because a lot more people are young. There's a very young population there compared to other parts on this planet, other countries. If you are younger by your very nature, you've had less years on this planet. Seek out older people to help you to make sense of things, because they will have a different way of seeing the world. They've had different patterns. The patterns that they formed, the learning that they went through without technology is so, so important and pivotal in this time of technology. And if we can learn to be far more focused on intergenerational learning and intergenerational decision making, intergenerational alchemization, as I call it, the more we can do that, the better. Because then we are actually able to take in the different types of thinking, the different types of critical evaluation. Maybe we can learn together to actually ensure that we are not just looking at the AI dependent approach that maybe young people are more likely to go down. Now, of course, it's not only age as the only factor. There's always going to be exceptions, different variables, etc., etc. However, we need to bear in mind what this research is showing us. So there we go. Some very interesting things. We haven't got the time to go through all of this, but this entire study is so, so fascinating and important to bear in mind. Also, of course, it's important to look at the study's limitations, because every study has limitations and has problems in itself. So as I said, self-scrutiny and scrutiny of all the tools we use, all the research we look at itself is important. This study's limitations include its reliance on self-reported measures and the potential sample bias. Nonetheless, the findings provide a compelling case for ongoing research and dialogue on the cognitive impacts of AI. Through understanding and addressing these challenges, we can better harness the power of AI to support rather than supplant human intellect. That's a nice word. Supplant. Sounds painful. The findings from this study open several avenues for future research. And as in any journal article, you have to look at future research. One potential direction is to investigate the longitudinal effects of AI tool usage on critical thinking skills over time. This could involve tracking individuals' cognitive development and AI tool usage patterns over several years to comprehensively understand the long-term impact. So another promising area is exploring specific types of AI tools and their distinct effects on different cognitive processes. I think that's very interesting. I think for leaders and for anyone wanting to apply this to their everyday life, the further research areas is something that we can also critically think about. It gives us ideas of what we need to observe in our world. Again, to critically think about what else might be happening here. So the findings from the studies open several avenues. One potential direction is to investigate the longitudinal effects of AI tool use on critical thinking skills over time. So just asking each other, just checking in with yourself, having the conversation with everybody about, how are you using AI? Why are you believing AI? How come you're trusting it? What questions are you asking it? How much are you offloading versus actually still doing the tasks yourself? Do you ever even question it, etc., etc.? Just, we have to stay critical. So I will now go on to the next research. However, what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop this video and start a new one so that we're not going to break up, because this has already been quite a long one. So I will see you in the next video. Thank you so much for joining me. See you shortly.